What is up, MMA community? I just want to let you guys know that this podcast may have some graphic language that may not be suitable for all audiences. The listener discretion is advised. Welcome to episode 28 of the BPMG and MMA show. And this is our first episode of 2021, Mean Gene. So let's hope it starts off to a great year that this show is going to have and hopefully the whole world has. But this is also a special edition. We're doing the Gold Chain Awards, the BPMG Gold Chain Awards. Gene, show them what it really looks like. There it is. But before we get into the crux of this episode, Mean Gene, how'd you like 2020?
Like 2020. What do you think?
Loaded question. How'd you like it?
Yeah.
For MMA, for life, what was 2020 like for you?
Surprisingly, it wasn't too bad actually. I was still able to work. Wife was still able to work. So
Yeah.
In that sense, it was pretty good. Kid, but yeah, I mean, 2020 was what it was. It was a shitty year in general. Obviously, a lot of things we were so used to doing were kind of taken away from us. But we managed, man. We made it work. It was actually not that bad of a year, to be honest with you, for us.
Now, how about MMA? What do you think about 2020 as a sport? Obviously, Dana White keeping it together. It was a sport this year. So what do you think of MMA and UFC specifically this year?
Man, I mean, A+ in my book for the UFC in particular. And then with Bellator, towards the end of the year, whatever, it sucked not having the smaller, the regional MMA because they're often a feeder to the major MMA organizations. But Dana White's Contender Series, stepped in there and was pretty much like the feeder system. It's always been the feeder system, but what I meant, it just kind of replaced the regional MMA to a degree. Because you saw, I mean, they were putting on so many fucking fights. They brought in a lot of fighters, to be honest with you, that should not be on the UFC roster. So it was almost like regional MMAs at the beginning of some cards. Yeah, man. I mean, to get back to the bigger picture, I thought it was a successful year for MMA in general, in particular UFC. I thought Dana White did an incredible job with piecing this thing together. It was rough at the beginning, obviously, when we really didn't know what was going on with COVID, how serious it was, how these other leagues were reacting across the world. But man, Dana White, he didn't run from it, man. He ran towards it.
He pulled it through.
Oh yeah, all the credit in the world goes to him. And the UFC put on some fucking incredible events. There were a lot of incredible fighters that became household names, which we'll get into with some of our awards. But yeah, man, overall, it was a good year. I thought it was a good year for MMA, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, because I'm itching at it, but I'm the most excited for this episode out of any episode we've had. Man, this episode is the episode of the year until next week when we do the predictions. I'm super excited for those. I love these things with MMA. These are my favorite things to do. Number one is predicting. Number two, giving out looking back and saying that was the best. I love doing that. So I enjoyed making these lists. But to go looking back at 2020, hit the nail on the head. There's not much else to be said. It was a great year. I like that the UFC, they almost took a page out of Bellator's book on how to deal with regional fighters to give them that chance and build up a star that way. Not to say the UFC copied Bellator, because ultimately, obviously, they've been doing it for a long time, but they really had to go hard on the regional scene I guess I should say regional fighters, and it worked out for them. Obviously, they're doing that 60-fighter cut, but they brought in like 100 more fighters than they would have, so ultimately there's a net positive in terms of fighters signed this year. It's great for everybody. In a huge down year, having a positive, like a net positive and increased employment, and that's phenomenal amongst in it of itself. But for them to also earn the money and create the wealth that they did this year. It's just all around amazing for the industry, amazing for the fighters, and amazing, amazing for the fans and the podcasters like us. So we can still have these shows. We don't just only have 3 months of shit to talk about. We have a whole year. With that being said, let's get into what everyone's here for. Let's start with the awards. And since we're debuting the awards, what a better way to debut the awards with the most impressive UFC debut as our first award. So right on our list, we have Kamza Chemieff over John Phillips. He finished him with a Darce choke. How'd you feel about that fight, Mean Gene? What we're gonna do for this is essentially talk about each one and talk about what Mean Gene and myself chose as the official award winner. So, what do you think of the Kamza Chemieff, not just in general? What do you think of his debut specifically?
Man, it was an incredible debut, super dominant. At that point, obviously, we didn't know what he was going to become. 2 more fights down the road after that one. But my goodness, I mean, it was just super impressive. I mean, he ran through him, never was in trouble at all. And, super impressive. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. It was just, it was a super impressive debut. I mean, he just thoroughly dominated him.
Yeah, it was super interesting looking back now and realizing that the UFC had set that up as, oh, this guy's a striker coming off of Cage Warriors, and now he's fighting Kamza Chemieff, who's supposed to be a striker. Like, they knew he had good grappling, but this dude was a kickboxer. And then he went in there looking like Khabib, and it was like, holy shit, who is this guy? And the fans obviously didn't know that, other than the legit hardcores who, they have the time of day. They go through every single fighter, every card. They know who's fighting on it, and the bettors specifically, like Mean Gene over there. They have to kind of analyze the card in and out, but most fans just saw it for what it was and like, holy shit, this dude's a great wrestler. And we didn't see until Gerald Mearshart that the dude has legit stand up as well. But it's just interesting having that hindsight and looking back, like, holy shit, the UFC definitely wasn't expecting that fight to even go to the ground specifically. But we'll see. The thing that hurt him in this, we'll just say right now, this isn't going to be the winner. But as you'll see as we go down the list of other nominees, it's just the level of competition. Obviously, neither of them had been in the UFC. That was both of their UFC debuts, I believe. Hopefully, I'm not getting that wrong. But either way, it was neither of them had a lot of experience, and John Phillips just wasn't a high level competition. But this next one, this is where we see high level in your UFC debut. We had Yuri Prochazka over Volkan Oezdemir, knocks him out with the right hand. Mean Gene, we were in Vegas that week. That was the Usman Masvidal card. Awesome time, great time in Vegas. I remember sitting in the sports book with Mean Gene, and we saw the Prochazka knockout. We're like, holy shit, that's a way to enter the UFC. And especially in that super open light heavyweight division, what a way to enter the UFC. Do you have anything that you wanted to say about that fight?
Well, I mean, Prochazka just super impressive outside of the UFC. Man, they bring him in and it's no slouch. They put him in there with the top 7 guy in Oezdemir, and what a debut, man. I mean, he just thoroughly picked that dude apart, hit him with that high kick that wobbled him, and then instead of just kind of piecing them apart, he went for the kill, which as a fan you love to see, and of course the bosses at UFC love to see as well. So incredible debut for him. So I was super impressed by him, and I'm looking forward to his next fight as well. I think he's fighting Rakic or Rakic, whatever.
Yeah, I love to see it, and you know what I love to see, and this is a theme throughout our entire list here for UFC debut. And maybe this is kind of a criteria going forward, but on your UFC debut, if you get a performance bonus, you fucking are off to an amazing start. And this is a perfect example right here with Jordan Levitt in terms of how impressive it was. Jordan Levitt over, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I think it's Jordan Levitt over. Or Jordan Levitt, I'm sorry, over Matt Wyman. The slam KO was what another amazing way to enter. I don't know if he specifically was thinking he was going to knock him out that way, but the ends justify the means. What a freaking knockout! start your career in the UFC. Obviously, get home that extra 50 grand. Yeah, and also, I mean, when you're leaving fans wondering should that move be illegal, you probably fucking did something amazing. So, what do you think, Mean Gene?
Yeah, beautiful slam, nice debut. You know, I mean, he's a UFC fighter, he's a fighter, so I mean, you expect violence out of him, but outside the cage or whatever you want to say, he's like a Roxanne Modafferi. You know, you look at Roxanne, she's super nice, unassuming, but she gets in the ring and, you know, she's putting it on you. And it's the same thing with this dude. You see him, he's kind of goofy or whatever. And my goodness, man, that was a violent KO. And the thing I liked about it most, man, is that, and I know his corner was calling him over anyways, but just to have that awareness in the cage to like pick him up, and not just, you know, not pick him up and immediately just get him to the ground, slam, whatever it is, like to carry him across the cage to your corner and then to slam him like that. And then it was crazy too. I thought it was impressive how he didn't hit him again. You know, he slams him and then he raises the fist, but he sees that he's totally out and just gets up. So yeah, man, that kid, impressive debut, 100%.
For sure, and that's a great point that you brought up, because coming out of someone on their debut, usually they get really excited, especially the UFC nerves. You're throwing a few extra strikes. To have that awareness, that may be good signs for the future of him. The next one we had is Chaos Williams over Alex Morono. Just that flurry of punch, it was chaos. I think Joe Rogan said that on the broadcast of it, but Chaos Williams brought the chaos and was just flurry punches, knocked the dude out, crazy power. What do you have to say about that fight, Mean Gene?
I mean, the guy's just got ridiculous power, and you know, we obviously see that in the subsequent fights after that. You know, after beating Morono, but man, it's chaos with that dude. I mean, he throws bombs. Yeah, man, it was an impressive debut for him as well. He throws bombs. He's got knockout power. And the thing I like about him is his crisp. He's got crisp shots. You know, he's got power in the straights. It's not these looping overhand rights. Really, it's like it's right down the pipe. So impressive, very impressive debut for him as well. So with that said, who's you want winner?
Yeah, there you go. So as we mentioned, mainly this came down to competition, level of competition. Specifically, you can't go any further than the winner on this one for level of competition and impressive finish. So I don't know how we're going to do a drum roll, whatever. I'll probably add sound effects in this, but without further ado, the BPMG Gold Chain Award, the first one ever given out for a UFC debut, most impressive UFC debut. I butchered on the first one. There you go. Out to Yuri Prochaska over Volkan Ozdemir. Just phenomenal debut in a light division. He came out and did exactly what he needed to do to earn himself a spot for most likely next in line. Just needs one or two more fights, probably one more fight with Rakic. The division is wide open. Obviously, Glover's there, so maybe he will have two more fights. But, man, he did what he needed to do. So he gets the Gold Chain Award, and we'll show you guys what that looks like. We'll be posting this on Twitter as well. But mark our words. We said this last episode. Mean Gene and I were just talking about before this show. This award will be something that people will be looking for. This will be a legit gold chain. Fighters will be wearing it. We'll see it in the press conferences. This is the award to get.
It's gonna be more coveted than the actual title itself.
Yep. BMF, move out of the way. This is the official title people want. Yeah. All right. With that being said, as we're the underdogs trying to make our way, we're going with the upset of the year. And the upset of the year, our nominees for the BPMG Gold Chain Award for Upset of the Year is Jan Blachowicz over Dominic Reyes. The spread on this, the closing spread, was between plus 190 and plus 220 for Blachowicz, who ended up winning. And Reyes was minus 305 to minus 239. So that was kind of the closing range on the betting odds on that. Betting odds weren't the biggest thing when we were looking at this, but betting odds were important. Obviously, you had to be an underdog. in the betting odds. But obviously, Blachowicz getting as high as 220, you could have put $100 and won 220 over this dude who dominated the entire fight. Blachowicz came in, made himself look amazing, and legitimately outclassed Dominic Reyes, who everyone was kind of high on. It was interesting, and I know we mentioned this on the show, but coming into that fight, obviously Reyes was like, it was almost like everyone was expecting Reyes to win that, and we're like, I don't know, like, well, Blachowicz is not the best matchup for Reyes, and obviously it played out that way. What did you think about the fight, Mean Gene?
Yeah, I think the main thing to focus on here when we're talking about upset of the year in regards to this fight is the fact that Reyes had such a great performance against Jon Jones, and a lot of people thought that he beat Jon Jones originally. So then in a match for the vacant title, and he's got Jan Blachowicz, which, you know, kind of one-dimensional for the most part, big power, but he's not a household name, you know, and everyone had seen Reyes do what he did against the GOAT in Jon Jones. So I think that led to it being such a big upset. You know, I think a lot of people were shocked by Blachowicz winning. I know we had Blachowicz personally in that fight. We talked about it at the time, and I actually, you know, bet on it too as well, and put it in my betting article as well that I had Blachowicz. But yeah, man, it was an impressive performance by Blachowicz. In my eyes, it was an upset, obviously, naturally, with the lines that you gave out, but also just the fact that, you know, Reyes was such a favorite in the fans' eyes and the general public after that performance with Jon Jones. So yeah, man, it was impressive by Blachowicz, and definitely one of the best upsets of the year.
For sure, especially being in a title fight. Those are always exciting when you see an upset in a title fight. And in the next fight, we had Brian Ortega coming back after almost 2-year layoff against Korean Zombie, another one. And going into this fight, people are like, okay, Korean Zombie, he just wins this one fight, and then he goes on for the title against Volkanovski. Not so fast. Ortega came in coming off of that fight with Max Holloway where he was just legitimately outclassed. Like, I know we had just mentioned that. Maybe we're going to overuse that, or I'll overuse that word today, but legitimately outclassed by Max Holloway, and he came in a completely different fighter against Korean Zombie. And Korean Zombie's super legit. Big rivalry going into that fight. I don't think anyone was expecting what we saw. Maybe some were expecting him to win, but no one was expecting what took place on that card. So that was a big one, and the spread on that was plus. He ended with closing range was plus 153 to plus 180 for Ortega, and then it was for Korean Zombie, it was minus 235 to minus 179 for that. So our lowest of the or closest lines in terms of closing ranges, but definitely kind of the biggest, most surprising result, I would say. What did you think, Mijin?
Yeah, I was thoroughly impressed, and it's funny that dichotomy of Max putting on the clinic against Brian Ortega, and Ortega looking like, you know, he wasn't ready for the spotlight or to even fight a fighter of Max's caliber. Mm-hmm. And then he goes in there, and the same thing with Korean Zombie. You know, he goes in there and you think Korean Zombie's going to school this guy up, and man, it was flipped. It was reversed. You know, Ortega was the one that was put on the clinic against Korean Zombie. I mean, Korean Zombie looked like he was stuck in mud. He didn't know what to do. And it was a stand-up fight. That's what was crazy about it. You know, yeah. Korean Zombie, it's a fight that Korean Zombie wanted. Okay, you want to stand and bang? I don't have to worry about you trying to take me down and do all that shit. But he couldn't even, striking-wise, couldn't even handle Ortega's onslaught. And then obviously Ortega took him down a couple times as well. But still, I mean, yeah, I was shocked by that. Definitely one of the better upsets of the year for sure. And again, it's considering a lot of this, as the viewers can see or tell, a lot of this is based on the previous fight. You know, you see Reyes have a close fight against Jon Jones. You figure he's going to win, loses. Then you have Ortega coming into this where he gets thoroughly dominated in his previous match. So you're thinking, this is going to might be close, but Korean Zombie's going to beat his ass, and he ends up fucking putting on a clinic. Like, it was just a great great performance. Not only just an upset, it was just a great performance. It wasn't a flash knockout. It was a great performance. So
yeah, and I like that you brought that up, because this is our criteria for this isn't specifically, like I said, it's not just about the betting lines. Most important to us is the importance of the fight. Like, what does this fight mean? Plus, what was the dichotomy? What was the context of the situation? What did they look like in their last fight? It was almost like the most unexpected result of a fight. So, but with that being said, we still had to put on the list the biggest odds, not only this year, but in UFC history. The biggest upset was Shannon Dobson she closed at plus 668 to plus 971. So you could have, on one of the betting websites, you could have bet $100 and won almost 1,000 back. Just a straight up bet, not any sort of, imagine putting the by decision or anything like that. You would have won a ton of money. But then Mariah Agapova, she fought minus 1,667 to minus 1,045 was that range. So unbelievably high. But the only thing that I think hurt this in the result, I know a lot of people are probably going to be like, I know most websites just gave this the award for upset of the year, but the big thing for us that this was an amazing upset, unbelievable upset, obviously the biggest upset ever, but it wasn't like a super high caliber fight. This didn't mean much for the division. It meant more for Agapova, if anything. This was literally the UFC was giving her someone to launch off of, and then it didn't happen. So if anything, it was just a litmus test for Agapova that she unfortunately failed. But I don't know. What do you think, Mean Gene?
yeah, I was just shocked by it, given the odds and the skill set of both fighters. I was shocked. So keep it short and sweet.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. But it was an amazing upset. Just didn't make our final cut on that one. So without further ado, for the second ever Gold Chain Award, we're giving this to Brian Ortega over Korean Zombie. I know obviously it was the lowest of the odds in terms of the odds, but what was most important, like we said, it was the most unexpected result. Jan Blachowicz, we expected it. Jan Blachowicz just wasn't a great matchup for Reyes, and ultimately he was someone who he had just knocked out two of his opponents prior, maybe three in a row. So it wasn't like it was totally unexpected. We had no clue what to expect out of Brian Ortega. All we saw last was he got destroyed on the feet. He's going up against someone who's a stand-up fighter, who's great takedown defense. It just looked like a fight that's not winnable for Brian Ortega, and he came out and just completely shattered expectations. So ultimately, that's why we decided that. I don't know if you want to add anything, Mean Gene, to that.
No, I think you hit it on the head. It's exactly what you said, in the sense of blowing on his last fight, comes into this one and just thoroughly fucking blows Korean Zombie out of the water, which is night and day difference. So that's why we gave it to him.
Yeah, I mean, the syndicates, like when you look at betting syndicates, this was the worst possible. All the syndicates money on Korean Zombie, because stylistically it was totally towards Ortega on that one.
Yeah.
But with that being said, let's go into some cards. How about this? We're going to Fight Night Event of the Year. The Gold Chain Award nominees are Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker. Amazing card that was. Let me pull. I think you have that up on your phone, Mean Gene.
No, I don't.
No worries. I already do. So I have it on the computer here. So we had Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker. Obviously, that ultimately you'll see that as a nominee for Fight of the Year. But we also had Mike Perry against Mickey Gall. If you guys remember, that was when the first fight Mike Perry had only his girlfriend in the corner. Probably the first time in UFC history people were more interested in what was happening in between rounds. And everyone was so pissed. ESPN went to commercial as soon as the round ended, and everyone's like, "What the fuck?" all over Twitter. Everyone's just sitting there waiting. The edge of your seat. What is this?
I was one of them, man. I was one of them. I was like, how if there's one time that we want to hear the corner, this is the time. How are you guys cutting the commercial? This makes no sense.
Oh man.
It was great. It was great.
But luckily they did come back and show some corner footage. It was the most anticlimactic moment. Maybe that should have been a year. most anticlimactic moment of the year. It was literally nothing. And then he ended up winning by decision. And then it was Maurice Green versus John Vellante, Brendan Allen versus Kyle Dawkins. All of these were just really good fights. First of all, also the context of the situation, still decently earlier in the year. This happened back in, let me look for it if I can find it. Fuck. When was this? I thought this is, okay, so this is June. All right, so yeah, this is still like early. At this point, everyone's still super high. We're loving this every fights every weekend. So these were a ton of prospects. Julian Rosa with that huge upset over Sean Woodson, Takashi Soto. It was just a great card. Tanner Boser that's when he made his mark. That now obviously he's really popular as a heavyweight. Kay Hansen over Jinyu Fry, and then Yusuf Zalal over Jordan Griffin. That was the first fight of the card. So super solid card. What we're gonna look, obviously there's a lot more prospects, not as many big names on that one. And this was where prospects made their name, made their mark. But it turned out to be a phenomenal card. It looked good on paper, turned out to be a phenomenal card to watch, and then obviously capped off by one of the best fights of the year. We'll see who gets that award once we get there. But do you have anything else you want to say about this card, me and Gene, before we move on?
I mean, it's obviously the Poirier and the Hooker was incredible. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, incredible card. More so how it came out than on paper, but even on paper it looked good, especially contextually. But then we had Covington versus Woodley. Covington versus Woodley was just from top to bottom, looked amazing for a fight night. So obviously, remember, these are fight nights. We'll get to pay-per-view next. But wow, what a card for capped off by ultimately that I think was a little bit anticlimactic because it was such a huge rivalry. That kind of just capped off with Covington dominating Woodley and maybe kind of cementing, okay, Woodley isn't who he used to be. My internet's messing up on this, but off the top of my head, I know it was Kamza Chemieff co-main event, knocked out Gerald Mearshart on that. That
was a feature. I can run it down since I have it. It's
Johnny Walker. Go ahead.
Yeah, Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley, anticlimactic, but it was still a big match and technically a finish.
Yeah.
Even though injury. And then you had Don Cerrone versus Nico Price.
Oh yeah,
that was a co-main event. Sucked that ended in a draw, but it was a good, fun fight. And then you had Kamza Chemieff fucking starching Mearshart in the featured bout. Johnny Walker with a finish against Ryan Spann. Spann almost had him out of there, remember? And then Walker came back. Mackenzie Dern.
Those were the elbows when he was taking him down and he was elbowing him on the side of the head, correct?
Yep. Mackenzie Dern with a slick armbar on Miranda Marcos. You had Kevin Holland, get dragged into deep waters and survive against Darren Stewart.
Yep.
Dustin Dvorak over Espinoza. You had Damon Jackson with the upset over Mersard Bektik. That slick guillotine that he hit him with. So yeah, there were some fun fights on there, and a lot of finishes too.
Yeah.
Silva had, Bueno Silva had an armbar over Maria. I'm not gonna go through the whole card. Just what I'm saying is the fight before that, Rose Clark had won by KO TKO. Derek Miner had a submission guillotine. You had Randy Costa with a head kick and punches over. So there's just a lot. And then it kicked off the night with Tyson Nam with a ridiculous knockout with Jerome Rivera. So it's just a fun card. Anyways, we can move on.
Yeah, I don't want to. The big thing was there's a lot of finishes on that, and on paper, card looked amazing. Yeah. So especially that main card. And this is also to cap that off as well. Kamza Chemieff, this is when he truly, all right, this dude's legit. Like he dominated. Now Gerald Mearshart's a legit vet. Let's see him against some legit out of top 15 competition. Sparks him at middleweight, and we're like, that's when his star was born. And we'll see once he fights Leon Edwards. Hopefully they can get that fight booked. But and obviously we'll see him more later in a few other award for nominees. yeah, phenomenal card that was. And then our last card is Figgy, right? Versus, and this is where Figgy got his mark against Benavidez too after the whole headbutt incident. That's fine. We'll run it back. Then he fights Joseph Benavidez, and wow, what a fight that ended up being. For mainly, I wouldn't say it was like fight of the year candidate, obviously not, but Figgy just dominates Benavidez, and then the card was just amazing. You had Hermanson versus Gastelum on that. Let me see if I pull it up. Here it is. Then we had Rafael Fiziev, another fucking super legit. Fiziev makes his mark here on that. I believe, no, that wasn't the. I was thinking of the forearm choke. It wasn't the forearm choke.
Hermanson versus Kevin Gastelum.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. The co-main event: Hermanson, Gastelum, then Fiziev versus Diakisi, or I always forget how to pronounce his name, but it is a legit competition. Was a great prospect, and this is where Lipsky did that nasty knee bar. Askarov over Pantoja. That's where Askarov looks super legit. And I believe he fought Kai Kara France next, if I remember correctly. And then Roman Dolidze over Ibragimov. Grant Dawson, another big prospect coming up. He beats Nad Narimani. And Joel Alvarez over Joe Duffy. Joe Duffy obviously is famous for beating Conor McGregor before in Cage Warriors. Then Brett Johns over Montel Jackson. Amir Albazi over Malcolm Gordon. Arman Zarukian over Davi Ram.
That was one.
What'd you say?
That was the one. That was super impressive.
Zarukian, yes.
Cannot wait for that dude to fight again. I was shocked that was his only fight, that he didn't get another fight.
Yeah, I forgot about that fight. And then Sergey Spivak over Felipe. That was a close fight, if I remember. That was a super close fight. And yeah, this whole card is super. Man, it brings back so many memories of, because this is kind of right around that we were just in COVID. This was in July, but it was just kind of like we were loving the fights. Everything was going on, and yeah, it just brings back so many memories. I remember cooking while watching the Zarukian fight and the Spivak fight. I put the two like handles on the cabinet. I put my phone up on those, just lodged it in there, and then I was just cooking. And then I knocked the phone over because I went to open the cabinet, forgetting the phone was there like an idiot. The phone drops.
That doesn't surprise me.
But
yeah, back when I mean, we're super appreciative of all of the cards in general, but back when we were really fucking appreciative of having some MMA.
Off or 4 weeks off. This is the perfect thing we needed, because now it's going to be just as I'm already. It feels weird. Tomorrow's just another Saturday, another night of no fights. It feels weird. I'm starting to get that urge again. So here we go. It's going to start the same shit we felt before when we had that month off in April.
So who's the winner
in April? So who the winner is again? The BPMG Gold Chain Award for Fight Night Event of the Year is going to Covington versus Woodley. We had to give it to Covington versus Woodley. Like we said, it was not only was it great on paper, but it also it came out to be great as well with the fights themselves. So phenomenal card. And in the fight itself, that was kind of a few years too late, but still something fans were super interested in, and it answered a lot of fucking questions. It answered, is Colby going to drop off at all after that war with Kamaru? Obviously, the answer was no. And then what do we expect out of Tyron Woodley? And obviously, the answer was unfortunate for him, but hopefully he can come back. I think he'll do one more in the UFC if he's not on that cutting list, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's on that cutting list. So next, we had pay-per-view event of the year. These are when we get some really nice cards. Mean Gene, tell us about UFC 256. Putting you on the spot. That was our last card.
Yeah, 256 was awesome. a lot of. I'm gonna pull it up too, just so I have a reference in front of me. But obviously, you had Figueiredo and Morono, which is, I mean, definitely one of the best fights of the year, 100%. On the short list for one of the best fights of the year. And then obviously you had Ferguson versus Oliveira, which was a good fight. That meant a lot to the division. What else did you have in here? Dern versus Janaroba, two Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu aces. Kevin Holland versus Souza. This was a really tough one, man, to pick, like the winner. I'm telling you. It was, we were different. We had to kind of come together. You can already tell where I'm leaning with my pick was, UFC 256. You'll say which one's yours, and then we'll announce the winner who ended up winning. But Kevin Holland knocking out Souza, Cyril Gane knocking out fucking Dos Santos. Guys moving up. Kevin Holland showing where he should be, the respect that he deserves, in his division. Same thing with Cyril Gane, Charles Oliveira, Cub Swanson, turning back the clock and beating Pineda with that knockout. Fiziev, one of the UFC's top prospects now, doing work against Moicano. Gavin Tucker looked great against Billy Quarantine. And on Quarantine is Tom likes to call him. And Tisha Torres looked good, and then Chase Hooper got back in the win column. So man, that card was great. I thought that was the card of the year. Hey, and it might end up winning our award. We'll find out in a second. But it was a great card.
Phenomenal way to cap off the year. A phenomenal year that the UFC put on, and it was so interesting, and what a way to kind of tell the story of the year. How many fights were canceled on that card was unbelievable. And they still pulled it together, and obviously it's a nominee for Fight of the Year and might be winning this award. So phenomenal job not only by the fighters within the card, but also the UFC for putting on that card and saving it. And really phenomenal for Moreno and Figueiredo for both turning right around within a month and headlining that card, providing a legit headline for that card, and performing, making that one of the fights of the year, possibly the fight of the year. Again, you'll have to wait for that award. But my personal pick was UFC 249, which was the card that we came back. We were fight deprived. Me and Gene had to go to a facility for withdrawal. In the arms of the that was a tough time for us. But it was crazy. I remember we obviously we went to one of your friends' house, but man, we were so pumped. This was such a we needed any fights, and man, not only did they give us any fights, they stacked the card from top to bottom. They gave it from bottom to top. We'll go Ryan Spann versus Sam Alvey. Both of those names, and that's the first fight on the card. Then you had Bryce Mitchell. What'd you say?
Entertaining fight too. The kickoff. Go ahead.
Then you had Bryce Mitchell against Charles Rosa. Finally, didn't just submit someone immediately. He finally went to decision. And then it started then you had Vicente Luque and Nico Price. What an exciting fight. Obviously, it ended up Vicente Luque won by doctor stoppage with that eye injury on Nico Price, disgusting eye injury. But you knew that fight was going to be bombs. Then you had Carla Esparza over Michelle Waterson. Super close fight. Ended up being split decision. Carla Esparza got the nod. I think you thought this as well. I personally thought Michelle Waterson won that fight, but and that was another thing. Kind of the side effect of those Jacksonville cards was the judging was pretty god awful. But then you had Alexi Olenek versus Fabrizio Werdum. That was insane that was a split decision, if I remember correctly. Alexi Olenek kind of came out there and was out striking Werdum, which no one expected at all. And then you had Pettis versus Cerrone, phenomenal fight to cap off the prelims. We're still on the prelims now. Going in the main card, you had Greg Hardy. He beat Jorgen De Castro. Jorgen De Castro broke his foot, if you guys remember correctly. And then he was beating Greg Hardy. Then he broke his foot and just went stale. It was weird. And then obviously Greg Hardy kind of got the decision on that one. Then Calvin Kattar with that nasty step-in elbow of Jeremy Stevens, disgusting knockout. And then we had Ngannou over Rosenstrike. This card was just unbelievably stacked, and it lived up to a hype. The last 4 fights were all finishes. Obviously, Calvin Kattar with one of the knockouts of the year over Jeremy Stevens, and Francis Ngannou over Rosenstrike, another knockout of the year contender. Then Henry Cejudo knocks out Dominic Cruz. That's where we got all the shit about Keith Peterson. It was a legit stoppage, if you ask me, but Henry Cejudo fucking cements himself, retires. Kind of a crazy announcement there. And then the fucking most surprising thing we could have expected at the time, Justin Gaethje outclasses Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson in Tony Ferguson fashion gets finished, which you're not expecting, but in Tony Ferguson fashion, he stays on his feet, doesn't even get knocked down, but obviously was just wobbling around. That was a really good stoppage by Herb Dean there. But man, that card was just fireworks. We were fight deprived, and the UFC delivered with a fucking star-studded. So that was my pick. Obviously, me and Gene had to come together on this one, but then the last one we had to choose from was UFC 254. So me and Gene, do you want to talk to us about UFC 254?
UFC 254. Yeah, another. I mean, it was a great card. Anytime Khabib's headlining a card, it's always fireworks, man. He is the biggest draw in the UFC besides Conor McGregor, and man, you're just trying to always see if he's going to keep that zero, in the loss column. And man, it was just I don't know, man. The vibe was just it was an afternoon card, which was a change of pace. It was cool. I got out to a sports book and was able to watch. It was just a vibe, man. Like that's the one thing I'll forever remember about the UFC 254 is the afternoon card. You got Khabib headlining it. You got Robert Whittaker against Cannonier. But yeah, Khabib, just start at the top. Khabib finishes Justin Gaethje. Obviously collapses, cries, on the mat after mourning his father's the passing of his father. So that was a big moment. And then Gaethje, we felt like Gaethje was going to give him a legit challenge.
Yeah.
It was just big in that sense. And then if you go down, Robert Whittaker beats Jerry Cannonier. Cannonier a killer. Robert Whittaker trying to win the title back. Volkov over Walt Harris, a very very good heavyweight fight. Good fight for the division. Phil Hawes knocks out Malkin, and that was a ridiculous knockout. Lauren Murphy with the win, gets a submission. And then the Magomed Ankalaev versus Ian Cutelaba fight was like
finally happened.
Whatever. Yeah, I was just gonna say like a year in the making or whatever it was. It was starting to turn into the Tony Ferguson Khabib. It was getting the Tony Ferguson Khabib treatment where it was like booked 4 or 5 times and just had the worst look. And man, Ankalaev just destroys Cutelaba. Watch out for Ankalaev too. I know this isn't that show, but I have to say that Tuivasa looked good coming back. He's potentially going to be cut. He looked good against Struve. Casey Kenny and Nathaniel Wood, the 2 top prospects, fun fight. Those guys were just going back, trading and whatever, man. I'm not going to keep going down this thing, but a couple more finishes in here as you go down. But yeah, overall, man, it was just a fun card. It was a fun card, a lot of finishes, and a lot of big names on the card. So I liked it. It was good, and that's why I made our list.
Yeah, it was a super, super solid card. Definitely, I think we can say that was definitely the 3rd best card of the year, I think. And with honorable mention, I do want to say before we announce the winner, honorable mention is definitely the Usman versus Masvidal card, which arguably could also be in that 3rd spot. Ultimately, I think we just decided because it was so top heavy, it was just the main card and then a huge drop off when you went to the prelims. But just a super, super stacked card. On that main card, it was 3 title fights. You had Usman, Masvidal, Volkanovski, Holloway, Piotr Jan, Aldo. I think really what it came down to also was that those fights on paper amazing, but a lot of this just didn't turn out as exciting. Like Piotr Jan Jose Aldo was pretty exciting, but then obviously that was probably the most exciting, definitely, of the title fights. It was super controversial, the Holloway Volkanovski, but ultimately kind of a boring fight. Especially looking back, if you rewatch it, it was boring at the time, essentially, or to a lot of people would say it was boring at the time, but looking back specifically, and definitely the main event, a lot of people were complaining. That's where all the foot stomp jokes, the Usman grabbing his dick, whatever. But that was hilarious. His hand got caught there, but it was a legit main event and a legit win, but it just kind of didn't live up to the hype that the card could have been. But that was also where we saw Prochaska knock out Uzumir. Ribas did that nasty armbar of Paige Van Zandt, took her out right away. And then Namajunas taking that win back over Jessica Andrade, and that was a really exciting fight too. Just ultimately, in execution, the card wasn't as good as UFC 254 was, but here we go. Mean Gene and I came together, and ultimately we did decide, drum roll please, that UFC 249 was the one to go with. UFC 249 wins the award for the BPMG Gold Chain pay-per-view event of the year. See that one, that'll save us some money in the future. We don't have to send that to anyone. Maybe we send it to Dana White.
And send it to all the fighters on the card.
Yeah, imagine. Yeah, it won't save us money there. Yeah, that was just an amazing card, and what a card to put on right after that big like dry spot that the UFC had. Go ahead. What were you gonna say? Dry spell, I should say.
And that you hit it on the head right there with that whole dry spot thing. There's a lot after we look at the card and us talking. You definitely convinced me that it was better than UFC 256. And yeah, and part of that reason for me was exactly what you said. We had that long lull. We didn't know when we were going to get sports back in general, let alone MMA or the UFC. And it was just highly anticipated. And then it was the interim title on the line for a division. All we wanted was Ferguson versus Khabib. That's like, if you're a hardcore, if you're any type of fan of the UFC or MMA in general, that's the fight that everyone wants to see, or one of the fights, and man, we thought we were going to have it. We thought for sure Tony was going to run through Justin Gaethje, and to our surprise, Gaethje, it was the opposite. Gaethje just thoroughly destroyed him and kind of we all know who Gaethje is since his World Series of Fighting days, but man, dude, he put his name on the map. He thrusted himself into the mainstream talk and then set up that fight with Khabib. So, and if you go down the card, Ngannou with the fucking knockout, I mean, there's just a lot. Even the prelims were stacked too, and
stacked.
It wasn't hard. Yeah, it wasn't too hard for you to convince me, but for me, one of the biggest factors, though, I will say, is just that lull, man. It was all the hype around that card for being out for however long it was, a month or whatever the hell it was, 2 months without MMA. So yeah, man, that's definitely the pay-per-view of the year, and all credit to Dana White and the UFC by stacking a card like that.
For sure. Yeah, you said it perfectly. I'm not had something to add, not even worth adding. You said it perfectly. We'll wrap it up with that.
Okay.
And we'll go right into the round of the year. The BPMG nominees, Gold Chain Award nominees for the round of the year. This was kind of tough to narrow it down, but we had Burgos versus Emmett round 2. If you guys remember that, way back in the early part of the year, we had Burgos versus Emmett, Shane Burgos versus Josh Emmett, and that was just a fucking banger. Emmett obviously, I think, tore like his ACL and a few other things in his knee, if I remember correctly, in the first round. Ended up pulling off the victory, correct? Yeah, he ended up pulling off the victory. I think I thought Burgos won, if I remember correctly, but either way, just a back and forth, unbelievable battle. I forget it was only 3 rounds. It feels in my head like, oh yeah, that had to have been a 5-round fight. No, it was just back and forth, amazing fight. And that round 2 was just the best of those rounds, and that round 2 was unbelievably back and forth. A lot of these, I wish I could put the video on. We wouldn't be able to. It would end the video on YouTube. But I'll be able to put some pictures up for you guys to see when I edit this. But that was just a phenomenal round specifically. There's not much else. I don't have to, I guess, cut to you every single time. So
No, just keep
right into
going.
the next one. Then we had Zhang Wei Lee versus Joanna Georgiac. Obviously, nominee, big nominee for fight of the year. But to that round 4 was just unbelievable. Obviously, at that point, Joanna already had the huge hematoma on her forehead. I think she won that round, the round 4 against Zhang Wei Lee, and it was just back and forth action. Really, a lot of how I decided which round to pick out of a lot of these fights, because usually the round of the years are going to come out of the fights of the year. And this kind of was ultimately significant strikes. The big ones for me were looking at significant strikes. So that round 4 and then rewatching that round 4 just was unbelievable. They cut me off if you ever want to say anything about these two.
Yeah,
next one.
Just Emmett Burgos, just obviously a war back and forth. Joanna and Zhang Wei Lee, same thing, war back and forth, but it was just technical. It was just beautiful, that fight, and just that round 4 in particular. And then, next up, number 3.
Fourier Hooker, round 2.
Mm-hmm. And what else is there's not much to say about that. That thing was, seriously ridiculous, man. These guys were just fucking trading shots back and forth, back and forth. It was exciting, man. I still playing that round in my head right now. It was incredible. So that's our number 3. Number 4.
Yeah, in a fight, I don't think in round 2, before we even move on, round 2 was I don't think that went to the ground at all. I think was the difference. That was like maybe it did at the end. I believe Dan Hooker knocked down Poirier in that round. Again, a lot of this is like that whole fight just mushes together for me, but what a phenomenal fight. But yeah, go ahead with Figueiredo versus Morono, obviously the most recent one. Round 4.
Man. Yeah, that fight was just great. It's arguably the best flyweight fight of all time.
Yeah.
That back and forth, and if it wasn't for that damn knee or the illegal kick to the balls, and that point deduction, Figueiredo would have retained his title and been 4-0 this year. But man, that was just back. Moreno's tough as fuck, and I can't wait for the rematch. It's the only fight you can do. Besides, obviously, Cody Garbrandt, if he even gets back in time. But I think you just do the Moreno again, man. That fight was incredible. I would argue it was the greatest flyweight fight in UFC history. So
yeah, and so specifically on that round 4, you're gonna a little bit ahead. We'll do the fight of the year next. But that round 4 specifically is Figueiredo versus Moreno was like this. Moreno had to win out essentially. He had to win only. In his mind, he had to win out to essentially win the fight. Figgy had to win 4 out of the 5 rounds. So Figgy at that point going into round 4 was up 2-1, but there was that point deduction. So round 4 was a must win for Moreno, and he came out and he won that round. And it was just a phenomenal back after losing round 3, getting kicked in the nuts hard as fuck in round 3. He came out in round 4 and it was just back and forth, puts on a clinic, rocks Figueiredo, and Figueiredo kind of goes forward. You can tell he's rocked. He's leaning into him, and just a phenomenal round specifically, and obviously fight.
Yeah.
But then what it came down to, round of the year, me and Gene and I picked for your Gold Chain Award. We chose Poirier versus Hooker, round 2. You just can't beat that. It was just phenomenal. Especially the context of the time, everyone was like, holy shit, what a fight. I remember how much celebrity attention that fight got. If you remember at the time, it was just kind of, and again, this was at a time where no sports were happening. So on Saturday nights, there's one thing going on and one thing only, and everyone was watching that. I think that added a lot to the kind of the aura of that fight, and specifically round two. It was just round one happened, you're like, oh, this is good. Round two happened, and you're like already thinking, holy shit, is this fight of the year? And then round three happens, round four, round five. It was just phenomenal fight. So there you go. Poirier Hooker round two gets round of the year. And moving on, we already pretty much covered them all, so we can probably go through this one quickly. But fight of the year nominees, we cut it down to three. Zhang Wei Lee, and we'll just say honorable mention right away was that Burgos versus Emmett fight, but it didn't make our final three, which we kind of wanted to narrow this list specifically down to three. But we'll start off with Zhang Wei Lee versus Joanna Georgiac, UFC 248, back in March. And it was a co-main event. I think I know a few people have said this, but I think this is a lot of what had to do with Romero versus Adesanya looking as boring as it did. Yeah, it was naturally kind of a boring fight. It was two counter strikers fighting each other, but after watching one of the best fights of the year, maybe the fight of the year, we'll see in a sec. Man, unbelievable. Anything else you want to say? It just made that main event look like nothing.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, we pretty much went through all these fights. We can kind of fly through this list, but yeah, that fight was incredible. It stole the show. That pay-per-view was obviously easily the best. I mean, these women went back and forth, just slugging it out, and it was technical too. It wasn't just, it was a brawl, but it was a technical brawl as well. So I was just super impressed by both women. So,
yep. Then the other ones on the list, we don't even have to go much into them because we kind of covered them already. But Dan Hooker versus Dustin Fourie, obviously phenomenal fight. Goes back to that aura. Everyone was watching it at the time, and it just delivered. And on a great card that was already delivering. Then we had Davison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. Obviously that the last fight of 20, or no, it wasn't. I'm sorry, that was Magny versus Thompson, but that was
pay-per-view.
Neal versus Thompson. But the last pay-per-view fight of the year, Figueiredo versus Moreno, delivered on all aspects. Phenomenal fight, and it ends in a draw. I mean, usually if it's a phenomenal fight, if it ends in a draw, it's probably a phenomenal fight. So that was just a great fight, and like we said, probably the best fight of the year, arguably. Or I mean, arguably the best fight of the year. It's in our nominees, obviously, but arguably, and I think you believe as well, the best flyweight fight of all time.
Yep.
But what we decided for the drum roll, please.
It's 1 o'clock.
Thank you. For the fight of the year, the BPMG Gold Chain Award goes out to Zhang Wei Lee versus Joanna Georgiac. They're just not only arguably the best fight of the year, top 5 fights of all time, and I would say best female fight of all time. Just unbelievable back and forth, and you can see it on their faces. Obviously, Joanna looked like an alien after that fight. It was just unbelievable fight, and it was just a perfect symbolism of being the toughest division of the women's divisions and one of the most stacked divisions in general. And then having that fight at the top, it was just, I love it. It's a great fight. If you want to show MMA fans, like you're trying to bring your friend, hey, come on, you should watch this sport with me. That's the fight to show them. That's definitely one of the top fights to show them.
Yeah, agreed. It was incredible, man. This was an easy pick. We both, I mean, when we were going through this, this was just, it was unanimous.
Yeah.
So it was an incredible fight. Like you said, the greatest women's fight in MMA history, for sure, in UFC, and just one of the greatest fights of all time, no question. So anyways,
sure.
Yeah.
Next, we're going to go back to some individual awards, and then we'll cap this off with the rest are all individual awards, and we'll start off the individual awards with submission of the year. So the Gold Chain nominees are Khabib's triangle choke over Justin Gaethje. Man, phenomenal. Only thing I'm going to say, because I think we can speed through a lot of these.
Yeah, we can.
Only thing I'll say is just the leg strength to number one. I love the story of he didn't want to put him in the armbar because his parents were there. Just that is such a Khabib thing. Um, And then having his arm on the wrong side, but having the fucking leg strength to literally just choke the dude out. It was just in so tight, phenomenal, and he was just cutting through. You can tell Khabib worked a lot on his jiu-jitsu, and hopefully we see him again this year, but we'll see. It's probably the end for him. Then we saw the Figueiredo guillotine. That was just disgusting guillotine. Dude had his head halfway out of it, but still ultimately gets the finish. Just the strength that a lot of this was just a lot of this was the craziness of being able to finish someone in that way. The strength it took, and a lot of it too was the caliber of competition. But then we had Alexander Romanov with that forearm choke. The dude fucking is in, I think it was half guard, it was half guard.
It was half
control. And he just fucking sticks his forearm and chokes him out cold. It was insane.
That was insane, man. That was just that was insane. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I've never seen that. That was insane. I thought he was uncomfortable. You know, he tried to get out. Maybe he taps, but he goes out cold. I mean, that was incredible and very impressive.
Yeah. It reminded me in terms of weirdness, but obviously this didn't make the list. I would say maybe honorable mention the Maurice Green over Jean Vellante, where he did like the on his back. It didn't make this list mainly because the fight didn't mean as much and it wasn't crazy. It was cool, but it wasn't insane.
Yeah.
But in terms of weirdness, like he had a reverse choke almost. Like he had him in a front naked choke. It was just weird. I think it was just because the dude couldn't breathe. But yeah, it was just the weird thing for me with that forearm choke is he has his forearm on him. How does the dude just not like swivel out of that?
I know. I know. It's insane, man. It really is. It's fucking insane.
Super weird.
Yeah.
Phenomenal finish. And to choke him out, it wasn't just a tap. The dude was out cold. Then one of the most impressive to me was Corey Sandhagen, Aljamain Sterling finishing him in that rear naked choke, cuts through him, just immediately goes across the ring, takes his ass down, grabs his back, and finishes him. It was insane. You were expecting, I think I had Sandhagen in that fight. And Sandhagen that was a legit fight. This is going to tell you who the next contender is. And just cut through him like butter. It was insane.
Yeah. So
super impressive. But what it came down to for us and who gets the award was level of competition, doing it on the biggest spotlight possible and in the most unbelievable way possible. And that came down to the gold chain award going to submission of the year. Came down to Khabib Nurmagomedov with the triangle choke on Justin Gaethje. Chokes him out cold, legs only. Just phenomenal finish. To retire. And it was each time, he defends his title against Conor McGregor, beats him in 4 rounds. Then he defends against Dustin Fourie, beats him in 3 rounds. And then he defends against Justin Gaethje. And each time you're thinking this dude has a better chance than the last dude. And each time Khabib getting even better. And then he finishes off Justin Gaethje, who this is the guy. Everyone's thinking this. He has takedown defense, it's folk style wrestling. Everything you're thinking, this is the guy. Not even close. Dominates him. And chokes him out cold in that 2nd round. So, wow, what a finish! And a lot of years. This was a year of the submission in a lot of ways. It was you saw a lot of submissions. This is really hard to make a top 4 list. I didn't even want to take it down to 3, but yeah, I love this year for submissions, and ultimately Khabib gets a nod. I'm happy to give him an award for this year, even though having 1 fight.
Yeah, it was impressive how he transitioned, man. That, obviously it's a title fight, level of competition, all that shit. We gave him the award, but it was sick that transition to the triangle choke. So he deserves it, man. But truly honorable mention. I think we both agree on this. That forearm choke by Romanov was crazy, but in the end, Khabib's it was super impressive, and yeah, man, he gets the award.
Yeah, and another one before we move on to KO of the year, which is another one I think people were really excited about, but is Ariana Lipski's knee bar was another big honorable mention. that I just wanted to throw out there. That was a really nasty and phenomenal knee bar. But then we had KO of the year. We had Joaquin Buckley. Everyone knows it. Everyone's seen it. The spinning sidekick came out straight out of a ninja movie. He learned it from what's that dude's name? I ruined the
Steven Seagal.
Yeah, exactly. That's who it was. Steven Seagal. Yeah, it just enough. You've seen it. It was phenomenal. Unbelievable spinning sidekick.
Yeah.
That's I would call it. It was just some crazy Taekwondo jiu-jitsu move. Then we saw that Cody Garbrandt duck left hook.
Get right the left.
Over. It wasn't Jimmy Rivera. This is when we're starting to get too tired for this.
Yeah, it was fuck.
Sun Tao, Rafael Sun Tao.
Yep.
Just amazing. You saw his work with Mark Henry. Garbrandt, we were wondering about him. The dude was not looking good. It was like 3 in a row or 4 in a row that he had lost, and he just wasn't looking good. Obviously, all of his fights, I think he got knocked out. So we're wondering what are we going to see next with Garbrandt? Goes with Mark Henry, works out this amazing striking.
Keep going.
You're plugging in your computer, no worries. And then he does that duck left hook, phenomenal. And then overshines. If you remember, Sean O'Malley had the knockout of the night at that point, and then here comes Garbrandt to kind of overshadow him with that duck left hook, phenomenal. Straight out of a video game. Then we had, another phenomenal one, Kevin Holland pulling a page right out of Nico Price's book, laying on his back. Fucking throws a right hook. I don't know how you generate power. I legitimately do not know how you can generate power from the bottom like he did, but everyone was worried about Jacare taking him to the ground. We should have been worried for Jacare's sake.
Yeah.
Knocked him out cold, falls over his legs. Again, so I'm sure you've all seen it, but
yeah. That was impressive, man. That was just wow. I could not believe it. The length on him, he's got that length. And those punches come out of nowhere sometimes. I know Jacare definitely was not expecting that. And hence him getting knocked out. But my goodness, I was impressed. It's tough. Some of these awards, man, like submission of the year and definitely knockout of the year, they all could get it. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
But, I know we got one more, but I think it's pretty obvious who's winning it. But go ahead.
Yeah.
We got one more.
Yeah, but in any given year, like you mentioned, any of these guys could have won. But ultimately, you'll see in a sec who won. But then we had the Calvin Kattar, as we mentioned before, the step-in elbow, just
nasty,
destroys Jeremy Stevens. It's like that thing when you think of, man, if I can land any blow, this would be the blow I'd want to land. And he did it, and we can see what it looked like, and it was brutal, just as brutal as anyone can envision it. But that's the shit. Like if you're doing MMA, that step-in elbow is the hardest, the nastiest strike that you can land, besides like different head kicks and shit, or flying knees. But my favorite thing is the step-in elbow. I love when Jones does it to switch stances. Like I love the elbows in MMA, and what a brutal elbow. And at the time, I remember I thought it was a big right hook. And then you saw the replay, and he just lights him out with that elbow.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, kind of obvious where we're going with this. Like I said, in any given year, any of these guys could have won, but this given year had Joaquin Buckley in it. So the KO of the year had Joaquin Buckley with that fucking ninja spinning sidekick. And what a way to change his fortune. Like, I know we've talked about this off air, but what a way to change his fortune. He started out the year with a loss to Kevin Holland, and now Joaquin Buckley's stock has never been higher. Because not only did he have this unbelievable knockout, but then he followed it up with another knockout in his following fight. So, happy to see him grow. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny that he got knocked out.
Yeah.
Kevin Holland had a ridiculous knockout, straight punch right down the pipe, beautiful, knocks him out, and then he comes back. And for me, real quick on the KO of the year with Buckley, it was the aftermath. Like not only foot caught, spinning sidekick, awesome, but man, he hit this dude right in the chin and froze him. I mean, he was just standing straight up, out cold, and then fell backwards. I mean, it was incredible, man. So, and just the sound of it, a lot of these awards, like for the Poirier and the Hooker, no fans in attendance. The Justin Gaethje versus Ferguson, no fans in attendance. So you're hearing those shots, those heavy shots.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and that shot or that kick by Buckley, man, the sound of it as well helped propel him to winning a gold chain. So
yeah, the most coveted award in all of MMA.
I'm telling you, man, these guys, like, I mean, I know your DMs have been blowing up. These guys are the chain. They want this fucking chain over the title. So
some people are gonna be mad at us for this, but I mean, come on, Joaquin Buckley, you deserved it, bud.
Yep.
But speaking of these unbelievable knockouts, let's talk about some dominance. The most dominant fighter of the year. Gold Chain Award nominees go out to Kamza Chemieff for his unbelievable, only been touched twice in the UFC, over 3 fights, 3 finishes. I don't know how else to describe dominance, but just unbelievable 3 finishes, and he just literally starches people. And just when we're thinking, okay, maybe he's just a ground only guy, no, knocks out Meerschaert back. No, he knocked out Gerald Meerschaert. And then, so not much else to say about Kamza, but then we had Kevin Holland, 5-0, 4 finishes, just the COVID king himself coming out. And just like we saw with, you can't even hurt him on the ground. He goes in against he goes in against Jacare. You're like, okay, well, the way to beat him is going to be the submission. And obviously that wasn't the way to go. He ended up getting knocked out that way. So being in a dominant guard position, just insane. But then we had Khabib, and ultimately we'll just kind of go through what hurt Kevin on this one, what hurt Holland on this one was having only that split decision with Darren Stewart. That split decision kind of hurt him in terms of most dominant fighter. If he didn't have that fight, or obviously if that fight went a different way, then he'd be very close to most dominant fighter with 5 wins this year, all finishes, besides obviously that split decision. Then we had Khabib and Charles Oliveira. You want to talk about them?
Yeah, man. Khabib and Oliveira. Khabib, what else is there to say, man? Dude just dominates. I mean, Justin Gaethje, and he's not winning it. Let's just be honest. Nurmagomedov's not going to win it. It's because
only having 1 fight.
Yeah, 1 fight. But I mean, he dominated Gaethje. I mean, what else is there to say? Finishes him in 2 rounds, and then you had Charles Oliveira. And man, that dude, what he did to Kevin Lee, and then obviously what he did to Tony Ferguson. And the Kevin Lee was in danger for whatever, half a round or a minute or whatever of a round, but he was impressive and thoroughly beat Kevin Lee. And then he follows that up by beating arguably one of the toughest, one of the best fighters in all of MMA, arguably the best fighter in the lightweight division. Obviously it's Khabib, but I'm just saying, everyone wanted to see those 2 match up to see if Ferguson can give him any trouble. But yeah, man, he goes out there and just dominates Oliveira. So without further ado, who's our winner?
Let's have you announce this one. I think this one is a little bit more obvious, but
I think it's pretty obvious. So the winner of the BPMG Gold Chain for most dominant fighter of the year is Kamza Chemieff, and I think it was pretty obvious. Like you said, we went back and forth on this, for whatever 30 seconds. But you made a great point about the Kevin Holland against Darren Stewart. He had some troubles in there, and narrowly got a split decision victory. Whereas Kamza Chemieff just out the gates, just running through all of his competition, thoroughly dominating him and getting him out of the cage in fairly quick
fashion.
Quick fashion, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, he's the winner of the most dominant fighter of the year, and I know we both are looking forward to 2021 and seeing if this dude can get a title shot, man. The skill seems like it's there. the mental's there. The UFC is backing him, so we'll see. We'll see if he continues to do what he's been doing. But he's got that gold chain, and I believe that that's the most important thing to date for him. So
there's resume. I mean, there's levels to your resume. There's only being hit twice in the UFC, and then there's a gold chain. It brings you to a new level. He went to a new level this year, just in terms of his fight talent, but now he's got a gold chain. So see him in a title fight soon.
Yeah.
What's
next?
All he's got to do is it's almost like a free, like it's like a get out of jail free card, but it's like a free title shot coupon. You just turn in your gold chain and okay, we'll give you a title shot. But the problem is no one wants to turn in their gold chain because it's more valuable than the title.
Yes, you said it.
So with that being said, an honorable mention I did want to mention was Gilbert Burns. He had a phenomenal year as well, obviously capping off. We wished we would have been able to see him against Usman, which ultimately I think inevitably anyone fighting Usman, that would have just been a back and forth fight, probably would have taken him off of this list for most dominant fighter. But he had a great year starting off the year with a win and then obviously dominating Tyron Woodley, which ultimately earned him that title fight. So, yeah, I think he was just someone I wanted to mention before we move on. But going into Comeback Fighter of the Year, our three candidates were our three nominees: Robert Whittaker, Brian Ortega, and Conor McGregor. Mean Gene, do you want to go through our list here?
Yeah, for sure. Robert Whittaker, obviously coming off of the loss to Israel Adesanya. He had some things going on mentally with him as well. Didn't know, had to check himself in the sense of the love of the game, love of the fight, love of the fight game. If the losses were adding up, the injuries were adding up, and just mentally it was messing with him. So a lot of people were wondering where he was going to go. He came back. He had 2 fights this year and won both of them in impressive fashion. In impressive fashion. And then you had Brian Ortega. I mean, we already touched on this when we gave him the award for biggest upset. I mean, this dude got thoroughly dominated by fucking Max Holloway. He was out for almost 2 years, and had that ACL injury. Comes back and then just puts on a clinic against Korean Zombie. So that was incredible. And definitely gets you in the running for Comeback Fighter of the Year. And then third was Conor McGregor. I mean, there's nothing really to be said. I mean, the guy's been out for, again, almost 2 years, coming off a loss to Khabib. And he comes out and just starches, looks super impressive against Donald Cerrone. It would have been nice to see him fight a second time at least.
Yes.
But those are our nominees. Do you have anything to add before I award one of them, the prestigious gold chain?
The prestigious, get out the sword, knight him. But I just want to add with it. Ultimately, what hurt was amount of fights, and we did have a back and forth on. I thought it was Ortega for a sec, but I think just kind of the more I thought about it, you had chosen Robert Whittaker was your specific pick. So we kind of had a back and forth on that one. We'll talk more, I guess, once you especially announce the award. I might have just given it away, but Conor McGregor, what hurt him was only 1 fight this year. So
yeah, and so
take the floor, Mean Gene. Stop letting me talk.
Yeah, so so obviously it's pretty clear that Comeback Fighter of the Year and gold chain in the mail on its way to Australia is
as soon as we get a big small business loan.
Yeah, get the PPE loans or whatever. The government.
Make a few businesses with the PPE.
Oh man. So the winner of that Comeback Fighter of the Year is Robert Whittaker. Ortega 1 fight, Conor McGregor 1 fight, Robert Whittaker 2 fights.
Yep.
A lot of other things that went into it for him, coming off of a big loss, losing his title, the mental issues that were going on with him and shit, and then to come on and fight some two tough motherfuckers, and Darren Till and Jared Cannonier.
Yeah.
To get those wins, yeah, man, he's got comeback fighter of the year. So
yeah, and it was that really made me. I thought Brian Ortega for a second. I just thought it was a great story, but it wasn't as good of a story as Robert Whittaker, and it just wasn't as impressive. With Robert Whittaker, like you mentioned, it was Robert Whittaker truly, like, he truly was thinking about just quitting, like just not doing MMA anymore. He disappeared.
oh, yeah,
back. He leaned back and just disappears in the virtual background. Take a look at our old logo. But yeah, Robert Whittaker, obviously he just quit. He ultimately like just decides like I might be done. And then he refound his love, and they throw fucking killers at him. They're like, all right, you're coming back. You know, we're gonna throw you legit competition. Give him Darren Till. A phenomenal back and forth. Darren Till's such a hard puzzle to solve. He solved it. And then ultimately, he fights Jared Cannonier, and then in essentially a number one contenders fight. And Robert Whittaker pulled that one off as well. So yeah, I think we're 100% right on that pick.
And last point, and let's move on for sure. Let's not beat a dead horse. But the last point on this is that adds to the comeback fighter of the year for him in particular is like he's next in line already. He just lost his title, comes back, beats two guys, and he's number one contender again in the division. And obviously Adesanya is moving up, so he's not going to get that shot. But yeah, man, he's number one. There's no one even in front of him. So it's crazy that that's a hell of a comeback to lose your title, fight two killers, win, and now you're right back in the number one position. So, anyways, congrats to Robert. Yeah, congrats to Robert Whittaker. And yeah, next, what are we looking at now? What's next? The breakout?
Here we go. Breakout fight of the year. This is the toughest one for us to choose for sure. This was the hardest one for us to choose.
We argued or whatever, discussed,
debated
for like a good hour on this shit.
Went to an octagon, had a fight over it. But it turned out good. Ultimately, we figured out what we needed.
And I conceded on this one. I'm gonna let it be known. I still don't feel. I'm still gonna make my point for my guy in this because I still don't feel 100% comfortable with the winner. But I do after having the conversation with you and what you said. I'm okay with the winner for sure, 100%.
You know what we'll do for this one is we'll just announce the award right away, and then we'll talk about the nominees. So ultimately the breakout fighter of the year, the most prestigious award, the gold chain, that being obviously male fighter of the year and female fighter of the year. Ultimately, the most prestigious is why we saved them for last. But breakout fighter of the year, we went with Kamza Chemieff. This was a tough one to decide. It was hard, but ultimately, this is what it came down to. First, we'll bring up Deiveson Figueiredo. We'll say him before the two that we argued over. Deiveson Figueiredo is a huge honorable mention in this one. And the reason I say that is because coming into this year, he missed weight going into that title fight against Benavidez. The story of this was Benavidez can finally win his title. Benavidez can win the title that has eluded him for so long. And Figueiredo was like an afterthought, but a super dangerous fighter, especially to the hardcores we knew of him. And he obviously knocks out Benavidez. And then we're like, oh shit, the dude's super legit, but he missed weight. How good? His stock was low. Then he goes in and he headlines another fight night card, and he fights Benavidez, and just dominates him, absolutely starches him, and the star was born then. And then he ends the year off headlining two cards. So he starts this year off with this dude who's everyone's just wanting Benavidez. And then he ends the year headlining two pay-per-views in a row. When's the last time we saw a flyweight headline a pay-per-view? Seriously, not even Henry Cejudo did not headline as a flyweight. You have to go back to
as a flyweight. I mean,
he did.
Yeah, I don't know because technically the fight against Dillashaw, probably the last time was when he. The last time is when he fought DJ when Cejudo took the title off of DJ.
That wasn't a main event.
Okay.
Because that was under Jones, I think. Jones versus, was that under Jones?
I don't know.
I don't remember. Either way, yeah, we'll move on. That just a big honorable mention to talk about. But this is the big argument. And we'll go with Mean Gene. You can talk about Kevin Holland, and then I'll explain why we ultimately chose Kamza Chemieff. But it's a tough one if you want to go over Kevin Holland's 5-0.
Yeah, and I'll make it quick. We won't dwell on this shit. It's for me, the reason why I thought Kevin Holland deserved it was because if you're comparing him to Chemieff, he's got 5 wins this year versus Chemaieff's 3. I felt like the competition that Holland fought was better. Chemieff was just coming in as a newbie versus was it Reese McGee? What was his first guy he fought?
He fought Phillips and then
Phillips.
then McKee and then Mearshart.
And then Mearshart. And Mearshart was solid, but Mearshart to me is like a Darren Stewart. And that's Kevin Holland fought Darren Stewart and beat him. But for me, Kevin Holland, 5 fights, 4 finishes, and spectacular finishes, knockouts. And then he caps it off against fucking Jacare. And Jacare is like legit contender, in that division for decades. And former Strikeforce champion. And yeah, man, I mean, the guy's, I think he's still top 10 in the UFC. I'm not sure in that division. It was just a very impressive win, man. And like, he was the underdog in that fight as well. Jacare was the favorite, and for him to just starch Jacare like that, and especially on the ground, he was able to handle his ground game. I just thought he was just the most impressive. I thought he was a breakout. Like no one knew of him, just like Chemieff, but breakout because he kept taking short notice fights. People, and he was about to headline too against Hermanson. He was about to headline that card against Hermanson until the switcheroo with the COVID shit that was going on. So I just thought that he was breakout fighter of the year. It just came down to the resume when it comes to the fighters, the level of fighters he fought, and then the 5 wins and the 4 finishes. So
yeah, and
that was for me.
What it came down to for Chemieff, why he won, is specifically breakout. If we're going by most impressive of the two, then obviously Kevin Holland, I would agree. But it came down to that breakout, the breakout fighter of the year, someone who truly broke out in the eyes of the fans, became a superstar. And you got to go with Chemieff on this. The dude was in his 3rd fight in the UFC. He's a feature bout. After that, and already, I mean, the dude at that point, if you remember, he had 2 fights booked. They booked him against Mearshart and Damian Maia, and he did so well against Mearshart that they scrapped the fight with Maia because it wasn't tough enough of competition. No one wanted to see it. I mean, that's just like, and not only that, obviously his Twitter following was unbelievably off the charts, and his next fight is a guaranteed headline. It's against Leon Edwards, but even if that Leon Edwards fight doesn't happen, he will headline a fight night card. And that's, when can you say that for someone with their 4th fight in the UFC? And that's ultimately why, Mean Gene kind of conceded on that point, was that we both had talked, and that was ultimately the nail in the coffin was, when you look at the word breakout, like what this award is supposed to be, he is the breakout fighter of the year. But fucking Kevin Holland, a very close number 2. And it hurts me not to give him that award for breakout fighter of the year. It is very hard to hand that over, but man, and it's interesting when you look at like what's next for both of them. They both have like, in the sky's the limit for both of them. We're gonna see a lot out of them. So I know. Just quick little side note, I saw MMA On Point was talking about one of the fights they want to see is Kevin Holland versus Kamza Chemieff. I think Mean Gene, we kind of talked about this. Yeah, I don't want to see that. Why knock off the 2 contenders? Wait for that fight to happen for the title. There's no reason to knock off the 2 contenders right now.
And to be honest with you,
one of the 2, I should say. Go ahead.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I mean, he's going to do what he wants to do, obviously, but everyone's cutting weight to as low as they can get. Conor McGregor could fight at 155. He's cutting to 145 as much as he can. Same thing with Kamza Chemieff. You can say what you want to say. He's a welterweight. It's just facts. Like, can he move up to middleweight and win a title? Yes, but he technically, to me, he's a welterweight. So why, like, that's number 1. They're in 2 separate divisions, quote unquote. And if you wanted to put him in at middleweight, why not why not just wait until he potentially wins a title, welterweight or whatever is big enough to where he can contend. Like, you're not knocking off prospects like that. So it's terrible. The UFC normally doesn't even do that, and when they do, it's kind of two prospects that are kind of at a crossroads where you're like, yeah, man, we know you guys are both really good, but we feel like one of you is like not that good. You know what I mean? Like, in the sense of like, we really don't feel like one of you guys are gonna get to a title. Yeah. They kind of know who it is, and they just match them up and shit. So
or a title eliminator. Like, a lot of times, then you'll see it at like an Ngannou versus Blades type of fight.
Yeah. So, anyways, but I just wanted to quickly, so we can get to the other two, because this is like going on almost 2 hours now.
Yeah, it's a good podcast.
But yeah, that's what it was for me. That's how you convinced me, exactly what you said. It was the fact that like this guy just busted on the scene. People were already talking about him fighting top 5 / fighting Kamaru Usman. Like, there's already talk about, can he beat the champ in Usman, and it got him. Yeah, and it got him up to the guy that a lot of people thought should be fighting for the title, which was Leon Edwards. So that's what ended up pushing me to your side, was that. So yeah, congrats to him. And I mean, again, I don't know. I don't know if the title is enough for him. Getting this gold chain, and now him being out with like the COVID effect. I hope that the COVID effect and him getting this gold chain doesn't stop his motivation from get a title.
Yeah. That's what I'm worried about with the breakout fight of the year. And maybe that's why you conceded a little bit more, but with your guy Kevin Holland. But I'm worried that people feel like they hit their peak once they get the gold chain. But I assure you guys, for all those fighters that might feel like, all right, I can die now, you can win it next year too. So what's better than one gold chain? So with that being said, we'll go into the female fighter of the year. This one was a little bit tough because we like to, when it comes to the fighter of the year, we really like to go into champions. So for female fighter of the year, the official nominees came down to the 3 champions, with Valentina Shevchenko and Amanda Nunes and Zhang Wei Lee. Ultimately, again, we can kind of rush through this. The biggest decision maker on this one, it was a little bit of a mix-up. So Zhang Wei Lee obviously had fight of the year, phenomenal fight against Joanna, but only had one fight, and it was back in March. So that kind of knocked her out. Obviously, Amanda Nunes only had one fight, but the thing that was kind of pushing her as a possible contender was her having officially defended both belts. So that was like a huge milestone for her. She also had a kid this year. That was great. So it was a good year for Amanda Nunes. But ultimately we had to give it to the Bullet, Shevchenko, for defending multiple times this year. The only female champion to defend multiple times this year, and just continuing her reign of dominance in that division. So not much to be said about this, but female fighter of the year goes to the Bullet. Did you want to add anything before we move on to male fighter of the year?
I think you hit it on the head. I think it was pretty clear that Shevchenko she defended it twice, and yeah, man, she's super impressive. So
an honorable mention, Mean Gene brought this up, that's why I say this, was Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern had a great year as well, but ultimately, like we said, we like to stick with the champions. And we keep that trend with the male fighter of the year. We had Davison Figueiredo. Obviously, he was a contender for breakout fighter, but all of his fights this year being for the title. Then we had Kevin Holland, 5-0, phenomenal year. He was the most active fighter this year. And then Israel Adesanya, capping off his year with that unbelievable finish of Paulo Costa, just absolutely dominated him. And then officially announced, right at the end of the year, they officially announced him fighting Jan Blachowicz for that light heavyweight title. But Mean Gene, who did we pick?
I forgot, who did we play? Yeah, we went Davison Figueiredo. I know we had a little debate on this or discussion, and it was only because Kevin Holland didn't get any awards, and we felt like, fuck, man, he deserves one. So he got the honorable mention award for fucking so many categories, I guess.
It
But
sucks giving him one for such a phenomenal year.
yeah, he had an incredible year. But yeah, it's Davis and Figueiredo. I don't even think it. I personally, when we were having this discussion, I didn't even think it was even like it should have even been a conversation for anyone else. I mean, the man he had 4 fights this year. He went 3-0-1, and 3 finishes. I mean, and 3 of those finishes happened in title fights. I mean, guillotine. What was the first one? He knocked him out cold, right? He knocked Benavidez out cold the first time. Yeah. Then he pretty much knocked him out and then choked him out. And then he defends the title and then ends up fucking choking out Perez. Yeah. Then he goes into arguably the fight of the year and arguably, at least in my book though, the greatest flyweight fight of all time. And then, I mean, he won the fight, man. We can be real about it. I think everyone admits, I think most people feel like the point should not have been deducted. And even with it deducted, he ended up winning 3 of the 4, 3 of the 5 rounds. It was just that point that fucked him. So, yeah, man, he gets fighter of the year. He could have gotten breakout fighter of the year. He's. I think it's just clear cut, man. This dude. I can't wait to see what 2021 brings for this guy. I want to see him against Cody Garbrandt because of the name. I feel like this guy's a star. He's already a star right now, and I feel like his trajectory is only going up, and it's going up quickly. And a fight against Cody Garbrandt would help to accelerate that. So congratulations to him, to Figueiredo. He's got the gold chain. Which I would assume he would say that it makes up for that tie for that for the draw against Morono. So yeah, man, he's male fighter of the year.
Yeah, and I love how and ultimately I know I kind of mentioned this right after when we reacted to it, but ultimately that draw may be better for him. That draw essentially guaranteed the next 2 fights. He's fighting Morono again. And most likely he's fighting Garbrandt. That allows a lot of time for a lot more prospects to be built up in the flyweight division, which is every day getting more stacked. So it's working out perfectly for him and for him to be potentially a legit superstar. Because the issue that we see sometimes is someone like Valentina Shevchenko or someone like Amanda Nunes where they're dominating too much to where people start not watching their fights. So we see that a lot, and it weakens the division a lot. We saw DJ is the best example. Flyweights were almost cut because there was nothing left at flyweight, but obviously now they're hotter than ever. But the final award of 2020, like Mean Gene mentioned, here it is, the male fighter of the year. So for everyone who won, don't get too happy with it. Mean Gene, you want to show them the gold chain one more time?
One more time.
Before they go.
There you go.
There it is.
What I was going to say too is just fighter of the year in general. If you're going to go between the male, we broke it down male and female, but just throw us out there. We didn't make this an official award, but I think we both agree. Obviously, it's Davis and Figueiredo. He had the most impressive year between the two champions. Something that's going to change. Could go the other way around, but Davis and Figueiredo won 2020. I feel like so. Looking forward to 2021, man. And I know I'm kind of maybe jumping the gun or whatever, but I'm looking forward to our prediction show, which will come out in about a week. Just looking forward to 2021, making some bold predictions, naming our champs. Predicting all the champions that will of each division. So this was fun. I had a great time doing this. Yeah. Like you said, I do like doing podcasts like this outside just breaking down each card or whatever, reacting. And then, man, the prediction one, I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's our favorite thing to do. That's ultimately, I've always said, that's what the difference between casuals and hardcores is that hardcores like to predict what's next. Casuals just enjoy the fights. So, yeah, this is phenomenal. And I do want to throw out one more little teensy award. Mean Gene, I never even cleared this with you, but that's okay because we technically never talked about the official name of the award. But the COVID King because we couldn't give him any other award, but for sure, unarguably, the COVID King. We'll give him a crown. Kevin Holland. He's the COVID King. Always willing to fight on short notice. 5-0, phenomenal year. Any other year, he wins a ton of awards. But it's fucking 2020. It was a crazy year. With that being said, I can't wait for next episode. This episode was great. I had a lot of fun. How about you, Mean Gene?
Yeah, it was fun. It was a great time. Happy for these fighters, getting these gold chains, and just happy to do something different, than instead of breaking down fights or reacting to fights or reacting to news and all that type of shit. It's cool to do things like this. So, and I think we'll continue to do some fun and interesting podcasts like this in general. We'll come up with some different things, whether it's whatever greatest heavyweights or whatever topical podcasts to break up the monotony. But yeah, man, I'm definitely you guys look out for the predictions podcast that's going to be coming out in about a week with us predicting 2021. So I'm like I said before, we're going to each of us will name our champions of the division as of December 31st, 2021. And then we'll have some bold predictions, probably 10 each, and maybe some fights to make. Who knows? But those two things for sure. And I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So I loved it. I had a lot of fun, Mean Gene. Before you guys go, bring some fucking traffic to All Access MMA website. Just go to allaccessmma.com. Phenomenal website. Follow us on Twitter. Everything's in the show notes. I had a great time. Thank you for doing this, Mean Gene. I know it was probably 2 hours, 2.5 hours, but my favorite podcast yet until next episode. So
yeah, I'm surprised I'm surprised I stayed up.
Yeah, it's a luckily Mean Gene didn't fall asleep. Only got distracted a few times.
Yeah, I consider that a win. So anyways, yeah, great podcast, and I'll be talking to you. All right?
All right, peace.